Campaign 3, Session 23. Someplace Calmer, Part 2. The session began with the party still fractured, though everyone remained focused on the larger mission. Tamisa remained at the Union of Ash, using the opportunity to study the secrets of her order and learn additional spells. Meanwhile, Rendevire, Didora, Valentine, and Anju, disguised as Black Opal, were politely escorted from the school grounds after overstaying their welcome. They agreed to regroup and discuss their situation privately at the chateau. At the chateau, the group began planning how they would destroy the serpent cult relic. Unfortunately, their plans were complicated by the continued absence of Azar, who had once again disappeared without explaining where he had gone or when he would return. Several personal matters also needed attention. Black Opal spotted one of the elves involved in the attack on the castle. Rendevire needed to retrieve some belongings from Pickle Juice's home, while Didora needed to meet Carmine to sell jewels through the black market. Didora's business meeting, however, did not go exactly as planned. Carmine was much more interested in reconnecting with Valentine than conducting business. The two took advantage of the opportunity to spend several private hours together, catching up and revisiting their relationship. Tamisa returns and the flower. Once Tamisa finished her studies, she returned toward the ship and discovered that Didora had transformed the chateau into a midday drinking extravaganza. Tamisa could not resist joining in, and as the rest of the party returned, the group gradually reunited. Tamisa then revealed something important from her studies. She had learned about a special flower that might help prevent Ilri-Chin from continually intruding upon their lives. This immediately gave the party another objective. They would travel to the border shires to obtain the flower, and then continue with their longer-standing mission of reaching the Serpent Cult's vault and destroying its relic, whether or not Ozar returned. The party headed back to the Leotep estates to prepare. Beanard finally gets through the gates. At the estates, Beanard, the cleric of Aden who had previously traveled with Versal, had become increasingly frustrated with the small settlement outside the estates. He wanted to enter, but there was one problem. He didn't know how to get through the gates. Fortunately for Beanard, the Lapis Dart eventually arrived and docked. While everyone was returning, Anju immediately went looking for clues concerning Adonris. She had not seen him before departing and feared that he might have left to confront the wolf by himself. While searching Adonris's tent, Anju encountered a guard who questioned her about the closed gate. Distracted by her search, Anju simply told him to open it. That seemingly insignificant command finally gave Beanard his opportunity to enter the estates. Anju learns what happened to Adonris Jinclair eventually informed Anju that Adonris had departed on a journey with Ares, 2 guards, and Termai. But Anju did not hear the whole explanation. All she heard was, Adonris left with Termai. The news devastated her. Already concerned about Adonris, Anju became despondent and withdrew to her office alone. Rather than dwelling on the situation, she turned her attention toward finding the flower Tamisa needed. Her search proved remarkably successful. Anju located a gardener who knew exactly what flower Tamisa was talking about, and more importantly, knew where it grew in the border shires. After negotiating a payment of 4 gold pieces, Anju convinced the gardener to accompany the party and help them find it. The gardener was Griswold Amarves. Azar returns. As the party gathered in the dining hall, Azar finally appeared. As usual, his arrival seemed almost perfectly timed. With the mission organized, supplies packed, and their destination established, the group boarded the Lapis Dart. The travelers were Valentine, Didora, Tamisa, Rendevire, Anju, Ozar, Beanard, Griswold, Amarves. The captain objected to the late-night departure, but eventually the Lapis Dart set course for the border shires. The Manticores. During the first watch, Rendevire and Anju spotted the first danger before it could surprise the ship. 3 Manticores approached. The party prepared to fight, although many of them had been asleep. In the end, the encounter was almost comically one-sided. Rendevire summoned an elemental, while Tamisa created a phantasmal force depicting an extremely angry dragon. Faced with the apparent presence of such overwhelming creatures, the Manticores quickly retreated. The party had barely needed to wake up. Ilri Chin boards the Lapis Dart. Eventually, the captain grew tired and landed the ship so everyone could rest. The watches changed, and Beanard began walking around the vessel checking its security. While doing so, he struck up a conversation with one of the crew members about their food supplies. Then something bothered him. Beanard realized that he had never seen this crewman before. He immediately recognized the truth. The man was a stowaway. The discovery woke the others, but this wasn't an ordinary intruder. It was Ilri Chin. Once again, Ilri Chin had found them, and this time his interests extended beyond Tamisa. He had also taken an interest in Beanard. The party immediately prepared itself. Ozar's ESP, the magical abilities of Rendever, Valentine, and Tamisa, and the weapons of Dodora and Anju gave them every available advantage. They were prepared to defend one another. Ilri Chin reveals his power. Ilri Chin calmly told the party that he had only wanted to talk. He also made it clear that their united strength did not frighten him. In his estimation, they posed little threat regardless of how many of them stood together. Then, rather than fighting them, Ilri Chin simply walked off the ship. Before leaving, however, he summoned snakes, creating enough chaos to keep the party occupied. He then revealed that he had already obtained what he came for. The party was forced to fight the snakes as they attempted to board the ship through the gangplanks. Beanard, meanwhile, had been watching the captain operate the Lapis Dart for hours. Calling upon the power granted to him by Adin, Beanard attempted to operate the airship himself. He moved into the control position and commanded, "Away." The ship responded. It lifted only a few feet from the ground and suddenly began moving extremely quickly. Unfortunately, Beanard could not actually control it beyond that initial command. The Lapis Dart slammed into several sand dunes. The result was catastrophic. The front of the ship was badly damaged, and Rendever's bedroom was destroyed. Eventually, the captain woke up, regained control, and brought the vessel to a stop. The party had no choice but to seek repairs. They headed toward the nearest settlement. They did not realize where they were going until they arrived. They had entered the Malcor realm. Arrival in the Malcor realm. As the Malcor realm came into view, the captain suddenly halted. The party saw why. Ballistas were pointed directly at the Lapis Dart. Soon afterward, the powerful mage Savian approached them while flying. He demanded to know whether they were friend or foe. Anju didn't think they were either. She remembered that Lady Sorora, ruler of the Malcor realm, had once considered claiming the territory that eventually became the Leotep Estates. That made the party's arrival politically delicate. Savion made sure the visitors understood that the realm possessed considerable magical power. He openly demonstrated his superiority and challenged the party's magic users. Someone needed to speak to Lady Sorora. Valentine volunteered. Rendever granted him the ability to fly, allowing Valentine to travel quickly to Sorora's presence. Valentine meets Lady Sorora. Valentine used his characteristic quick wit and diplomacy to convince Lady Sorora that the party had not arrived with hostile intentions. He explained that their ship was damaged and promised that the party would remain aboard while repairs were made. Sorora agreed. But there was a strict condition. They had 3 days, no more. As Valentine prepared to leave, however, he saw something horrifying. Bear the Crazed was being held on a punishing cross. Bear was barely alive. Valentine had once considered Bear a close compatriot, and seeing him reduced to this condition affected him deeply. Valentine made a promise. He would find a way to free Bear. The party enters the realm. Valentine returned and informed everyone that they were permitted to enter under Sorora's conditions. Anju, concerned that someone might recognize the Lapis Dart, requested that the sails be lowered. Tamisa offered another solution. She could use phantasmal force to disguise the ship. The magic immediately attracted Savion's attention. He returned and angrily reprimanded the party for using magic within the Malcor realm without authorization. Anju was already emotionally distressed. She was worried about Adonris leaving with Termai. She also knew that her former lover Sterling lived in the Malcor realm. The possibility of encountering both men in the same place left her deeply uncomfortable. Anju finally confessed her concerns to Savian and asked for special permission to hide the ship when entering and leaving. Savian refused. The party docked for repairs. Ozar goes after Malcor Valentine, then told everyone that Bear was alive, although barely. He intended to rescue him, but the news meant something even greater to Ozar. The party was now standing in the realm of Malcor, the child destined to usher the Druids back into the world. Ozar knew he could not ignore this opportunity. He turned invisible and entered the realm in search of the child. Instead, he found Bear first. Bear pleaded with Ozar for help. Ozar gave him his word that he would help him, but Ozar's invisibility did not fool Savion. Savion recognized him and confronted him. Ozar was considered an enemy of the realm and was ordered to answer for his crimes. Knowing that his intentions were genuine, Ozar agreed to meet with Lady Sorora. Sorora impales Ozar. Lady Sorora immediately attacked. She impaled Ozar. Despite the obvious pain, Ozar did not lash out. Instead, he apologized. But importantly, he wasn't apologizing for his actions. He apologized for how he had carried them out. Then, Ozar finally revealed what he believed about Sorora's son. He explained that Malcor was extraordinary. He was destined to save not merely the Malcor realm, but potentially the entire world. Ozar explained the true potential of the Druids. He told Sorora that Malcor could eventually become extraordinarily powerful, perhaps powerful enough to match any magical power currently living. Sorora remained skeptical. She told Ozar that she would believe him if the sage could provide proof. Ozar immediately realized how fortunate this was. The sage was currently residing at the Leotep Estates. Getting proof would therefore be relatively easy. Sorora removed her sword, deliberately inflicting additional damage as she did so, but allowed Ozar to live. Ozar then asked about Bear. Sorora explained that Bear had been punished for filling Malcor's mind with what she called Druid craziness. Then she offered Ozar a deal. He could have Bear if he took another living traitor with him. Ozar accepted. He left with Bear and another injured, unnamed man. Sterling returns. Before Ozar could reach the ship, another familiar figure arrived. Sterling, the former captain of the Lapis Dart, and the man who had once loved Anjou, recognized the ship immediately. He came aboard. Sterling reunited with his old friends and was particularly impressed by how far Dodora had come since he had last seen her. Anjou, however, reacted very differently. She hid deep within the ship. She was embarrassed, afraid, and unwilling to face the man who had once been so important to her. Eventually, she swallowed her pride. Anjou came onto the deck and greeted Sterling. She attempted to project the confidence and dignity she had developed through her new noble position. The meeting was surprisingly peaceful. There was a faint, almost wistful look in both their eyes. Both seemed to understand that what had existed between them belonged to the past. It had simply never been meant to last. Sterling eventually departed for his next adventure. The flower and the next mission. Ozar finally returned with Bear and the injured, unnamed man. The Lapis Dart had also been repaired enough for them to continue. The party resumed its journey and finally obtained the flower Tamisa had discovered at the Union of Ash. With the flower secured, the party intended to return it to the School of Ash, where it could be studied, propagated, and eventually used against Ilri Chin. But there was no time to rest. The party had been pursuing another objective for far longer. The serpent cult relic remained intact, and the relic was one of two major things maintaining the serpent cult's power. After everything that had happened, Ilri Chin's intrusion, the crash of the Lapis Dart, the confrontation with Sorora, Bear's rescue, Sterling's unexpected return, and the acquisition of the flower, the party finally turned its attention back toward the mission that had been waiting for them. They were going after the serpent cult relic, and this time they intended to destroy it.